And the deadline for that is February 1st, so we had to act quickly on that to see if we could get the funding. And that's going to be through Northwest Cog. Last thing is the Troop B consolidation of dispatching and possible staff reduction or closing. I sent 2 letters out to the governor to rethink this. Andrew Rohrbeck has met with the commissioner and the colonel of the state police, and he started an inquiry into consolidation and the possible staff reduction. And he's asking all the right questions, and I'm very thankful that we have him on board to help us out with that. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our lovable little...
Say a few words, after which Senator Rohrbeck will speak to us about his jumping into the 5th congressional seat race, and then we'll open the floor up for questions and answers. Senator Rohrbeck has very deep roots in Connecticut. He was born in Torrington. He's a graduate of our Hotchkiss School. He's a graduate of Yale, cum laude, and he's a graduate of the Virginia Law School in 1987 with his Juris Doctor. In 1988, he joined his family's law practice, joining with his father and sister and brother, Rohrbeck and Rohrbeck, and that, if I believe, was founded by your grandfather in 1883. Great-grandfather in 1883. And Andrew, in addition to carrying out a very active life as a politician, has full-time practice with the law firm. Andrew's married to Kara Dowling and their son, Andrew Kevin. They live in Goshen. And if anybody would like to see a picture of a future senator, I'm sure he has a few tucked away in his pocket. But wait till after the Andrew began his legislative career in 1964 as our 64th House District Representative, and he served there through 2000 when he ran for the State Senate, and he's been representing the 30th District, which represents about 15 towns. As he finishes up his 6th term as our state senator, he caps a 17-year career that is distinguished by numerous Republican leadership positions and many recognitions and awards for his service and leadership. In all those years, Senator Rohrbeck has never missed a roll call vote. He has consecutively voted for, and I got to read this, 8,470 votes. He is the only one of 187 legislators that can claim that kind of record. Exemplary. He is also the Senate ranking member of the legislature's Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. His Senate bio reads, and I want to quote, "He has been at the forefront of opposition to Governor Malloy's over-reliance on tax increases to balance the state budget, and has consistently fought to eliminate unnecessary government spending and to lower the tax burden, particularly on small businesses and the middle-class worker. Senator Rohrbeck has also been the voice of fiscal responsibility on the State Bond Commission, consistently voting against borrowing to pay for non-essential pet projects." End quote. I want to point out that in October 2011, in the Huffington Post, it was reported that Connecticut is now the #1 state in debt per capita exceeding $5,400. The #2 state we exceeded by 14% is Hawaii. I think Obama lived there at one point. And this month, MarketWatch ranked Connecticut as the #1 worst state in which to retire, replacing Illinois, I think another Obama state. If you're interested, you can read these stories in detail at our website, SalisburyRTC.org. Topping that off, last week, Connecticut had its bond rating, credit rating, reduced again from a AA2 to a AA3. So we can expect in the future to be paying more for the money we borrow. This is the second downgrade for Connecticut in the last 2 years. Senator Rohraback and his Republican colleagues have often faced a too predictable 30-year Democratic-controlled legislature. I want to cite 2 examples before I turn this over to Andrew. Senator Rohraback voted no against the Jackson Lab project, which the Malloy legislature agreed to fund with $291 million over the next 20 years. According to the nonpartisan Office of Fiscal Analysis, that will cost the state of Connecticut an additional $153 million in interest. The second example is the 9.4-mile Hartford to New Britain busway at an estimated cost of $570 million, not including another $40 million for a bridge that needs to be fixed. By some projections, when completed, this busway will run at an annual operating deficit of $12.5 million, which is going to increase to over $22 million by 2030. Some claim 12,000 jobs are going to be created by this project. Temporary construction jobs, some claims are that there will only be 100 permanent jobs created from it. Senator Rohraback fought the busway because the federal government will pay at least $459 million of the cost, which is why Governor Malloy decided to push it through quickly at a 10-person commission for a 7-3 approval. That project was supported heavily by unions, which, ironically, are now very pissed off because a lot of the bids for that project have gone to out-of-state companies because of the federal funding. In closing, I want to point out that both of those projects were strongly supported by our current Democratic House representative. So please welcome Andrew this evening.
I don't wish to have my back to anyone, so I may stand here if that's agreeable. Thank you, Chris, for that warm introduction, and thanks to each and every one of you for being here this evening. You have 2 options tonight. You can go at 8 o'clock and hear a very rosy assessment of the state of our union. Or you can stay and listen to me for a few minutes when I try to give a more honest assessment, not only of our union, but of the state of Connecticut. Happily, I will be your state senator until January of 2013. So I want to start my remarks by sharing with you what my day has been like. And it hasn't been a bad day, it's been a busy day. Bob Laux and I, at 8:30 this morning, were at the University of Connecticut Torrington campus, and Bill Riska was there as well. And I'm going to say the same thing with Jeff here as I would say if Jeff weren't here. But I do think part of the nature of politics these days is there's a constant effort to try to entrap people in saying something imprudent. And I'm not given to saying imprudent things. But please, all of you, bear in mind that what we're experiencing today is what American politics has come to. So my day started with Bob Laux at the University of Connecticut Torrington campus, where we discussed the legislative priorities for the 20 towns of Northwest Connecticut, the 20 mayors and first selectmen of Northwest Connecticut, the Litchfield Hills Council of Elected Officials, and the Northwest Council of Government. We're there with probably 6 or 8 state senators and state representatives. And for years, a #1 priority of both Democratic, Jeff, and Republican first selectmen in Northwest Connecticut has been to revise the state's prevailing wage laws, because they inhibit the ability of small towns to make the most of the public dollar. And what I brought up was the recent phenomenon with the new Science and Technology Center at Region 1 High School. The 21st Century Fund has been doing unbelievable work raising private money to provide educational enhancements to the students at Region 1. And they recently completed the conversion of the Ag Center to a new Science and Technology Center. At the end of this project, they got a bill for $60,000. Someone came in from the Department of Labor and audited the project and said, this should have been a prevailing wage job. Now understand, the 21st Century Fund, the administration at Region 1 put the project out to bid. This is America. Everyone had an opportunity to bid. The free market chose a competitive bidder. They didn't complain. Region 1 didn't complain. The building was built within a budget. Everything was said and done. Then, out of the blue, the State Department of Labor says, this ought to have been a prevailing wage job. And we're sending you a bill for $60,000 to make that right, which translates into $35 an hour for each of the 1,700 hours of labor that were put into that project. And so what I said this morning was, if that isn't an impetus for the legislature to revisit the wisdom of that program, what is? Because I don't think the 21st Century Fund wants to go out and fundraise to pay a prevailing wage delta. And it's not a very sexy thing to fundraise for. And I think Bob would back me up that the vast majority of the mayors and first selectmen there, of both parties, are anxious for this change. And to Representative Willis's credit, she said, now is not the time for a change. There's nothing wrong with this program. It protects the middle class. It's a good thing. And I said, I'm writing to Speaker Donovan because I want him to heed the pleas of people in the small towns of Northwest Connecticut, Republicans and Democrats alike, to change this program. So that was my first meeting of the day. I then got in the car, drove to Hartford, and participated in a legislative committee meeting, the Regulation Review Committee, which I served as chair of. And that wasn't a very sexy meeting. And then I had a press conference to discuss legislation that I'm introducing this year to end two particularly pernicious aspects of the state budget, things that we can ill afford and that have outlived their usefulness. Specifically, I proposed changes to the state pension system. As Chris noted, Moody's last week downgraded Connecticut's debt rating. We now join California and Illinois having the worst debt rating of any states in the nation. And the reason that Moody's highlighted for downgrading our debt was because we have $71 billion in unfunded pension and healthcare liabilities that we're not dealing with honestly. So the legislation that I proposed today with two fellow Republican senators was legislation to put an end to the phenomenon called pension padding. First of all, I'm sorry, you're very kind with your attention. This is kind of arcane stuff, but it's important stuff because it's driving our state to bankruptcy. Connecticut is rare in that retirement benefits are the subject of collective bargaining in Connecticut. They are not the subject of collective bargaining in New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, or Massachusetts. And so what that means is in those states, the legislature dictates what the retirement benefits are. But in Connecticut, Governor Malloy has tied the hands of the state through the year 2022 before we can make any changes to those programs. The legislation that we proposed today said that for new hires, for people hired by the state of Connecticut on or after July 1, 2012, they would not be able to pad their pensions. And people pad their pensions, the way you calculate your pension in Connecticut is you take your 3 best years. And so the practice is to load up on overtime in your last 3 years of work so that you can calculate your pension off of a very high number. In fact, several people retired this year earning more in their pension than their base pay. And these are young people. They're retiring after 20 years of service. So these are people in their 40s who are retiring at more than their base pay, plus health insurance, for as long as they live. So what we said was, for new hires, why would we continue this practice that's driving us to bankruptcy? And we said, for new hires, everyone should have a 401k defined contribution plan instead of the defined benefit plan which public employees now enjoy. Nobody's ox will be gored. We're not breaking any promises that have been made to existing state employees. Quite frankly, existing state employees should be happy because we're going to be strengthening the solvency of our funds. So that initiative was put forward. I can't for the life of me come up with any logical argument why we wouldn't do that. But I would bet anyone in this room it will not happen because Speaker Donovan, the Democratic leadership, are so captive to the labor bosses that anything that represents a threat to their world is dismissed out of hand. And I don't mean to digress, but these state issues, I care passionately about the state I call home, the state you call home. And as I said, I am the ranking member on the Finance Committee for the next year, and I've got a job to do, and I'm going to do that job while I run for Congress. I'm not going to walk away from being your senator. I'm still there to do that job. So, in any event, there's a lot of things going on in Harvard. Two quick things I'll also share with you. And you may disagree with me, but the governor has announced his support for two initiatives which I find very troubling. The first is his support for online gaming. The governor thinks it would be a wise public policy move for the state of Connecticut to allow people to sit at home with their laptops and their credit cards and to be able to gamble 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're so desperate for revenues that the governor appears poised to sign off on that legislation. I, for one, think that's an incredibly corrosive thing for our society, and that the problems that it begets will far exceed any solutions that it might offer. The second thing the governor is endorsing, and in most crowds, half the people agree with me and half the people disagree with me, but the governor wants to permit cameras to be installed on the traffic lights in Connecticut so that government can keep an eye on us when we're on the road. And I have a civil libertarian streak in me that is fearful of the reach of big government. And for me, cameras on traffic lights are the beginning of a world that I am not anxious to inhabit. You know, they can track you by your cell phone. There are people that can know where you are because of where your cell phone is. And that is a scary phenomenon. I actually have a constituent in Goshen who was robbed twice when he was out of state. And he's convinced it was because people were tracking his cell phone and knew that he wasn't home. But I digress. For the past 18 years, I've had the privilege of representing the people of Salisbury and Northwest Connecticut in the Connecticut General Assembly. I now want to take the skills, the relationships, the values, and the experience that I've garnered in those 18 years and put them to work for all of you in Washington, D.C. The approval rating of Congress is at an all-time low. And I'm sorry to say, that's with very good reason. And as bad as Congress is, the Obama administration is even worse. As you all know, our national debt has grown from $10 trillion to $15 trillion in the past 3 years. That translates into $48,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. Debt that none of us asked for, debt that all of us are obligated to repay. 42 cents of every dollar spent by the federal government today is borrowed money. We are on a pathway to a very unhealthy future if we don't take immediate steps to sober up and bring our spending under control. Our country is overregulated, the free enterprise system is under assault, and in my view, the Obama administration is intent on remaking this country along the lines of Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and you wonder, you look at Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and say, is that what we want for our country? A country of entitlement? A country where the social fabric is unraveling before our very eyes? I say no. I think what we want for this country is the land of free enterprise and opportunity that has made us the greatest country on the planet. So I'm a Republican. I would say that right into the Democratic camera. But you know what? I'm an American before I'm a Republican. And I've always felt that the end game of public service ought to be advancing the common good, not partisan advantage. And I'm running for Congress because I don't want Chris Donovan to be my congressman. Did you get all of that, Jeff, in the frame? Okay. I hope he's watching now. And I believe from the bottom of my heart that I represent our party's very best hope to win this seat and for Connecticut to once again have a Republican voice in the halls of Congress. I wish that Republicans would choose the next member of Congress. But sadly and decidedly, that is not the case. And guess what? Democrats aren't going to choose the next member of Congress either. 25% of the voters in the 5th District are Republican. 30% of the voters in the 5th District are Democrats. 45% of the voters in the 5th District are unaffiliated voters. And in 2008, Barack Obama won this district with 57% of the vote. In that very same year, I won re-election to my state Senate seat with 65% of the vote against a strong Democratic opponent. On 9 consecutive occasions, each of the 9 past elections, I've been able to win my seat with the support not only of the Republican base, but also of many unaffiliated voters who are going to be the people who hold the key to who our next member of Congress is. I've always thought that the American dream was that each successive generation would have it better than the generation before. That dream is very much in peril. I want to do my part, working with you, to keep that dream alive. And nothing is more important for a member of Congress than for that individual to know the people that he or she represents, and for the people that he or she represents to know their congressman. So the first order of business for me serving as your state representative and your state senator has always been to be there for you, to know what your problems are, to work with you to solve those problems. And a lot of people are saying to me, Andrew, we don't want to lose you. What are you doing running for Congress? We don't want to lose you. And my reply to them is, you're not going to lose me. If things work out as I hope they will, I'm going to continue to serve you in the same way I've always served you. I'm just going to be serving you from a different place, but in the same way that I've always served you. So I look forward to working with all of you in the weeks and months ahead to spread a message. I'll say, I'm happy. I'm out every night. My wife and son deserve a special place. They have a special place in my heart, but they should have a special place in the hearts of all of you because they're giving me the freedom to do what I need to do to win this race. And I'm going to work my tail off from now until Election Day. But I'm not going to be able to do it alone. I need the support of all of you. So 2 last things. The reality of American politics, you can't win unless you raise money. I don't have the ability to write checks on my own account to underwrite my campaign. And I'm happy to report that later this week we'll be filing our first FEC report. And what that report will show is that we have raised more money. I announced on October 20th, between October 20th and December 31st, and 10 days without power and phone at our house. I don't know how you guys say that. Eligible for the rebate. We raised more money than any other Republican candidate has raised in this race in any quarter. And I'll give you a hint. It's substantially more than $200,000. My handlers tell me I can't reveal the exact number until the report is filed. But we're well on track to raise the resources that we need to be competitive in this race. I'm grateful. Oh, and then on the political front, I was first endorsed by the Goshen Republican Town Committee. And it's kind of a bit of a sentimentalist, but it's nice when the people that know you best support you the most. I was unanimously endorsed by the Republican Town Committee in Goshen. Then I was endorsed by the Republican Town Committee in Sharon. Last night I was unanimously endorsed by the Republican Town Committee in Morris. Tomorrow night it's North Canaan. Thursday night it's Watertown. I would love to earn the support of Republicans in Salisbury. And at this point, I thank you for your attention, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Floor is open to questions or comments. Is there anybody who'd like to start off?
Well, I can't help but come to this meeting, and I'm very excited to talk about what Andrew has done for me and my company and my people. And to know that Andrew has been there for us when no one else was. He saved my company. He did things he's articulate. He knows what he's talking about. I'm excited to have him going for Congress. I think he can do a wonderful job for us. The interesting part about Andrew, he talks about voters that are neither Republican or Democrats. That's right, because I have a number of people in my company, over 100, and I know that Andrew has helped those people, whether they're Republicans or Democrats or unaffiliated. And he's helped them if there's a real need, and he sees that need, and he helps them. And I'll tell you, I am very impressed with what Andrew has done for us. And what he's done for us, he's going to do for you and all of Connecticut. So I couldn't be more behind a person than I am Andrew. He's a great fellow.
Thank you.
And just for our guests who don't know, that is Newt Shonley, who is a member of the Salisbury RTC. Any other questions?
What company? Charter Oak Service. We provide support services for elderly people in the northwestern part of Connecticut for 26 years now.
Great.
Kathy?
Andrew, do you support Israel's right to exist and to defend its established borders?
I do. In fact, I just finished my paper for APAC yesterday. In 2007, I was chosen by the Aspen Institute to participate in a fellowship. It was an amazing gift to me. It's something called the Aspen Rodell Fellowship. There was a business tycoon named Bill Buttinger who sold his company for billions of dollars. And what he wished to do with his money was bring together young political leaders. And so what he committed to do for the Aspen Institute was, over a period of 10 years, to fund a fellowship where each year 12 Republicans and 12 Democrats from around the country would be selected to participate in a 2-year fellowship. So in 2007, it's a blind thing. It's something you can't apply to. They come to you blindly. It's like those MacArthur Awards, whatever. All of a sudden, I just got a phone call one day from a former congressman named Mickey Edwards saying, "Congratulations, Andrew. You're a Rodell Fellow with the Aspen Institute." And I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "For the next 2 years, we're going to take you to China, India, Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and then we're going to bring you to Aspen, Colorado on 2 weekends and New Orleans on the 3rd weekend to learn the art of leadership." And because of that trip, I saw firsthand, I went to Jerusalem. Who here has been to Jerusalem? It's an amazing place. If you get a chance, I never would have gone there but for this opportunity that was given to me. It's an amazing place. And when you go to Jerusalem and visit Israel, you realize just how exposed this country is to the forces who are committed to its destruction. So the answer to your question is, I strongly support Israel's right to exist. I don't think any negotiations should go forward until Palestine acknowledges Israel's right to exist, and America has very few allies in the Middle East. Israel is our only reliable friend and one whose interests overlap with ours a great deal, in my opinion. And things are happening now. I think there's many people who fear that between now and the election, Iran is going to drag either Israel or this country or both into a very unhappy circumstance. And I pray that doesn't happen, but we certainly can't appease Iran and let them think that the world community is going to abide them getting a nuclear weapon. Because if they get a nuclear weapon, it's going to be shared with their cohorts who are not our friends. Not to suggest that they're our friends, but there are a number of countries that are not our friends.
Andrew, there are, as far as I know, 3 possible candidates on the Democratic side. Do you think Chris Donovan is going to be the man for the Democrats?
I don't know. I have to ask. Pardon me? Well, although I don't, it's not. I think Chris Donovan, the leadership of the public employee unions have no better friend than Chris Donovan. He has been willing to elevate their interests above what I believe is the common good time and time again. And so to the extent that that community of people can be motivated to vote in a Democratic primary, I think Chris Donovan is the presumptive nominee. But I don't discount Elizabeth Esty or Dan Roberti, the other 2 Democrats in the race, each of whom has strengths and resources and ambition. So what makes this race winnable for a Republican, in my view, this time, is that there will likely be a primary amongst the Democrats. And that primary will cause them to deplete their resources. And I think, quite frankly, there's probably likely to be a primary amongst the Republicans. But if the Republican candidates deplete their resources and the Democratic candidates deplete their resources, at least it's a level playing field. 2 years ago, Justin Bernier and Sam Caligiuri had a primary which left both of them bankrupt at the end of the primary. Meanwhile, Chris Murphy continued to amass his war chest because he didn't have a primary. So by the time the primary was over, Sam Caligiuri was fighting with 2 arms tied behind his back, and Chris Murphy had been given a chair to stand on. And this time it's not going to be like that.
So you think it will not go to a primary?
No, I think it probably will. With 5 candidates in the race, I think it's reasonable to anticipate that it will. But we'll see. There's a lot of time between now and May.
So let me ask you another question. The election being in November, if you were not elected, will you remain our senator?
No. I'm not. No, and you know, I have loved every minute of my public service, and I hope to continue it. But I wasn't going to pull a Joe Lieberman and say, well, I'm running for Congress, but if that doesn't work out, I want to put a marker. I'm all into this race for Congress. And the good news is the Republican candidate for my Senate seat is an individual I hold in the highest regard, an individual named Clark Chapin from New Milford, who is, don't look forlorn, he's a little more conservative than I am on some issues, but he's an honest, hardworking person of outstanding integrity, and he will serve the district very well. I can't wait for him to be my senator, and I'm supporting him enthusiastically.
And just as a reminder, Clark Chapin will be with us next month if you'd like to come meet him. Any more questions?
Yes,
No. Go ahead.
Cindy?
No.
Who?
You.
John?
Oh,
Hi. All right. John.
I'm Cindy Smith, and I'm a member of the RTC. And this is not an election question, but it's a question for the town and the state. And it's about the fuel assistance plan.
Yep.
The price of fuel has gone up dramatically. I don't think much change has been in the amount that is given to people who really need it over the years. I don't know, it's been in place for several years. and I don't know if there's been any increase. At the moment, as far as my knowledge goes, it's about $500 a year. $500 does not go into very much oil to survive the winter.
No,
So is there anything that's going to be done about that? The state going to allow the towns to have more money to give to the people that need the help? And more people are going to be needing the help because money's not around there anymore.
and this was a topic of conversation this morning, Cindy, at our meeting in Torrington. The Obama administration proposed a budget that dramatically reduced the amount of money that comes to Connecticut for our home heating oil program, which makes you wonder what their priorities are. Because if keeping people warm isn't something that matters to them, it doesn't speak very well of the president's budget. So we in Connecticut are managing the phenomenon of lesser money coming from the federal government, and we're trying to fill in the gaps with state resources. But state resources are pretty few and far between these days as well. So the way they chose to handle this reduction in funding was, rather than saying to people, quick, get in line because we're going to run out, was to try to serve the same number of people, but sadly with a lesser benefit this year than last year. And we're hoping, the federal government has not had a budget since 2009. I mean, they are operating on continuing resolution after continuing resolution. The hope is that more federal money will make its way to Connecticut so that no one will go without being warm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gentleman in the back, John.
Yes, there's a term that you've been using this evening, and it's called the common good.
Yes.
And I don't quite understand the meaning of that from your perspective, and could you please explain that from your personal perspective and also from a political one?
Well, divining the common good is a never-ending process, in my view. When one serves as a member of the General Assembly in Hartford, all day long you are lobbied from one side and the other. Everyone who approaches you tells you that they're there to do something for the common good. But I think one learns as an elected official not to take all the information that you get at face value, but rather to try to meld it all together into some kind of coherent whole. And so the common good, as I see it, is that universe of policies which holds the greatest promise of enabling the greatest number of people of achieving their fullest potential over time. And that's a pretty broad definition of the common good. But what is not the common good is rewarding a community of people because they have a strong political presence in the state capitol or in the United States Congress at the expense of other people who aren't paying attention to what's going on. You know, there are 381 people who have retired from the state of Connecticut and are earning pensions more than $100,000 a year. I don't think that's the common good. That's people that have worked a system to benefit themselves, and when the people that I represent are struggling more than ever to make ends meet, to pay their bills, I think we have to strike a better balance between what we reward people with in their retirements and what other people are trying to accomplish. And right now, when you look at what's happening with Medicare and Social Security, the common good is going to require some hard choices going forward, because if we just close our eyes to reality, we're going bankrupt, and we're going bankrupt very quickly, and that's not the common good. So I think sometimes the common good involves people having an interest besides self-interest. I'm not sure that promoting self-interest always promotes the common good. I'm a capitalist, I'm a Republican, I believe in free enterprise, but when it comes to entitlements, we have to make sure that we can afford them in the long run. I'm not for,
Mika?
Does this work? Does this work? I don't know.
Yes.
And I'm Mika Armstrong. Would you be so kind to tell me or us the difference between your political views and those of Justin Bernier?
honestly, I don't know that, I wouldn't want Justin to characterize my views, and I don't think it's fair for me to characterize his views. I'm running on the strengths of my candidacy, not on, I think as Republicans, we all have an interest in winning this election. So, what I see happening in the presidential primaries makes my blood boil, quite frankly.
Yes,
Because I've got Jeff here with his camera on, and I'm not going to say unkind things about my fellow contenders for this position, because even if I don't use them, Jeff might use them. And,
they don't have to be negative.
well, but I'm not going to promote my opposition's candidacy either. Let me just put it this way. I think that I have a depth of experience serving people. Right now, I represent 14 of the 41 towns in the 5th Congressional District. I have a record that I'm proud of, and I have an ability to work through issues. And I have a demonstrated ability to do that. So, in a word, I think that's going to matter to the people of the 5th District to have a congressman who can hit the ground running. And I'm ready to hit the ground running when I get to Washington, D.C. And I don't think any other candidate has the skill set that will enable them to do that.
All right, Alfred Nemiroff.
Andrew, you previously, I think on 2 occasions, alluded to the nefarious expression prevailing wage rate,
Yes.
which I've been fighting all my life. I think I would like some clarification. By that, do you mean the Davis-Bacon wage rate, or is that the union wage rate?
The prevailing wage, the issue that we're debating is the state equivalent of the Davis-Bacon Act for federal projects.
You should explain that what it means. You can hire non-union contractors, but you must pay them the union wage rate.
And what I'm surmising happened at Region 1 was exactly that. Non-union contractors were probably the successful bidders. I don't know who it was, whether it was Burlington Construction or, but some local company.
And they raised over $500,000
I understand.
from the 21st Century Fund, through that fund,
Yes.
and then an additional 60-some thousand.
But the contractor that did the project was probably a non-union
I'm
contractor.
sure.
And so they bid on the project. They won. They got the job. They were paid for the job. Everybody was happy. The Department of Labor came in and said, it has to be prevailing wage. And so you have to pay an additional $35 an hour above the market, essentially, for each of the 1,700 hours of labor that went into that, to the tune of $60,000. And that $60,000, think of what you could buy to fit out that building with the $60,000 that's going to satisfy that requirement.
Plus, we got the right to work
Yep.
state. We should be a right to work state. Union.
No, well, it's, what my biggest disappointment, well, I've got a bunch of disappointments with the Obama administration, not the least of which is this Solyndra debacle, where the donors to Obama's campaign were rewarded with hundreds of millions of dollars of support for their solar energy plant. But more distressing to me than that is the assault on the Boeing Corporation, which is trying to build their jetliner in South Carolina, and the National Labor Relations Board is taking the position that they have to build it in Washington State, which to me is, and the Republican member of the National Labor Relations Board, last time I checked, was resigning in protest over the heavy-handed tactics that were being used by the administration in connection with that circumstance. So I don't want you to miss the State of the Union. If what I've told you, if you want some happy juice, I'm sure that it will be dispensed liberally. Well, then, no pun intended.
Any final questions?
Yeah, you said you represent 14 of the 45 or 41
Yes.
towns, but what percentage of the population do?
Roughly 20%. Yeah, but the good news is I represent 14 of the 41, but there's another 6 or 8 towns that are on the periphery of my district: Roxbury, Bridgewater, Watertown, Harlington, where I have solid relationships with both Republican leaders and with the people in those communities. So my challenge is, and Joanne's question is a perfect segue to the handout piece of this. What happened in September and October, I decided whether to get into this race. And so I called around to people whose opinions I respect and asked them their assessment of the Republican field. And time again, as I called around the district, people said, Andrew, I've met all 4 of the other candidates. They're all perfectly nice people, but I haven't signed up with any of them because I'm not convinced that any of them can get the Republican Party to the finish line. Understand, it's an uphill battle for any Republican candidate in the state of Connecticut. If one of us is to get to the finish line, a lot of stars have got to align. I think they are aligning for 2012. But as I called around, more and more people said, Andrew, I'm not signed up with any of the other candidates, but if you get in the race, I'm all in. I'll do everything in my power to get you elected. I'll work with you. And I'm going to apologize. The type on this sheet is very small. That's the bad news. The good news is the type on this sheet is so small because on the back of this sheet is the list of all the people who have endorsed my candidacy as of the time of the printing of this card, which was about 3 weeks ago or so. We're reprinting the card now with an updated list. I also neglected to say, and I want to say this to the camera, I had Andy Warhol would be proud. I had my 3 minutes of fame at the end of December when the phone rang and it was Greta Van Susteren. And she said, Andrew, would you mind coming on my program tonight to discuss Mayor DeStefano's idea to give illegal immigrants the right to vote? And I said, Greta, it would be my pleasure to come on your program to discuss that. Because I think for the mayor to contemplate conferring on people that are in this country unlawfully the most treasured right that we as Americans enjoy is outrageous. So you can go on my website, www.roarbackforcongress.com, and you can watch my 3 minutes with Greta Van Susteren. And you can also see an updated list of the individuals who are supporting my candidacy. You've been very kind with your attention. I'll stay around as long as people have questions. It's great to see such a healthy crowd here in Salisbury, and I look forward to working with all of you towards victory in November.
I'm Mary Robertson. I've been working with Andrew for 2 or 3 months now. The level of enthusiasm, I've probably talked to 300 or 400 people, one-on-one at the grocery store, at meetings, out and around Litchfield County. The level of enthusiasm for his candidacy is amazing. I'm doing some fundraising for him. We have Democrats and unaffiliated that have been writing significant checks. I have not heard a single word of criticism or a lack of support for him in a single conversation since October 20th. I mean, this is a great candidate. He's got, everyone that I'm aware of solidly behind him. And we're going to keep doing more of these. I'll collect emails and addresses for future events too, if anybody wants to give me their.
Actually, everyone's invited to North Canaan Town Hall tomorrow. Same time. Just act surprised when I give the speech. Thank you all for your attention.
I'm very Mary Robertson. I've been working with Andrew for 2 or 3 months now. The level of enthusiasm, I've probably talked to 300 or 400 people, one-on-one at the grocery store, at meetings, out and around Litchfield County. The level of enthusiasm for his candidacy is amazing. I'm doing some fundraising for him. We have Democrats and unaffiliated that have been writing significant checks. I have not heard a single word of criticism or a lack of support for him in a single conversation.
After that meeting with Clark, we will have met everybody, and then we will be able to discuss endorsements. Okay, is there a motion to close the meeting? After that meeting with Clark, we will have met everybody, and then we will be...
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the state employee phenomenon, yes, I saw some.
How are you?
Good.
Anna McGuire.
Hi, Jeff.
Nice to meet you.
You're the campaign manager or
Since 2000.
Field coordinator.
what field coordinator? Okay.
Government, federal, state, 15% more jobs. Right. And then more statistics came rolling in with this email that I got where the raises. There were only one.
The problem is, the people who you think are going to get, no one's sort of advertising much right now.
Right.
So,
If the general public knew this, they could fix it.
It's our job. So then, we drive all the way over here.
Where do you live?
There was a meeting working today, so it's
There you go.
switch party now.
Democrats out there.
Not going to happen.
To see you.
I guess, he's...
And I understand Mr. Gloucester knew about the Excuse me.
It's legal.
Just executive ownership.
Well, and the president. And you know what, Jeff, you can film me all you want. I think for people that are here, members of the public.
All right. Can I just get you while you're answering questions?
I guess it's nice to meet you. I'm glad you're here. I'm not glad that you're here, but I understand that you're here. I hope you're being paid well to come all the way out to Salisbury.
Well, he does that, but still, if I drop it on her and have her track,
it's not personal to you. You're just doing your job. But I guess I'll just get used to it.
Yeah. And I'm going to be here for a while, so.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right.
Pardon me? Oh. Jeff. Oh, I understand. All right.
States around us.
I didn't want to be specific.
Federal government is consuming a disproportionate share of our national It's incredible. I think that you're a bright person. You can do it yourself. I understand program directions, so I know no, I'm just what do you from right now I farm. He's right over there with the best. Where do you at? Over there. I'm learning at a late stage. It's okay. But it's no, my wife I agree with you.